Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and the most heartfelt salutations to all of you on this Sunday morning where I am. It's 10:30 in the morning here on a Sunday. A normal start time for the John Campea Show, normally on the weekdays, but decided to do it a little bit earlier today. It's Ask Me Anything Day. I take a lot of Saturdays and do Ask Me Anything. By the way, hello to everybody in the live chat that I see there already. Aries and Mark, Edgar, Dennis and Felice, Irene, Savith, Derry. Anyway, good to see all of you guys here. Hopefully you guys are able to see and hear me okay. So yeah, normally when I do Ask Me Anythings, I normally do them later in the day on Sundays, but today's no ordinary day. We got a couple of NFL playoff football games. We got The Last of Us later. So I thought, you know what? If we're going to do an Ask Me Anything, might as well do it a little bit earlier in the day. So that is what we're doing here this early. And I'm so glad all of you guys could join me here today for this, as we're just going to spend the entire, morning here together of me taking your questions to hear about the things you want to talk about. Now, listen, I'll let you guys know that the super chats are already filled way more than I thought they would be at this point. So I'm only going to leave the super chats open for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to need to turn it off, or else we're going to be here till like way later than than we should go. So it just gives you heads up there. But already lots of questions come in from you guys. Saw an amazing, look, we're not here to talk about UFC, but really, really good card last night where everybody who I wanted to have win lost. And yet it was still a really, really good card. Had a good time. Me and Ann watched it. So anyway, guys, today is an exciting day again for sports fans like me, a couple of NFL playoff games, but for all of us, new episode of Last of Us tonight. Cannot wait. Love the first episode so much. And of course, we're going to be doing our open spoiler discussion tomorrow. All right, guys, with that all said, let's get over and start taking the live questions, shall we? And we're going to start off here with something that is too big on my screen. Give me a second. There we go. We'll start with this. Hold on, let's get down to the actual questions because we're starting with Jared Vester. And Jared Vester writes, one of two, I'm starting to get worried, and it's a big if Star Wars Rebels becomes essential to watch before Ahsoka, the Star Wars Disney Plus shows, there's two of two, will have the same problem like comic books, where you have too much Mandalorian, where you have to watch Mandalorian, then Boba Fett episode 6, then Ahsoka episode 4, then go back to Mandalorian. What are your thoughts on this? Well, yeah, listen, I spoke about this on the John Campea Show once or twice. Like, one of the brilliant things about Marvel has been, at least up until very, very recently, is Marvel's gotten like 25, 26, 27 films in, but any one of those films could be your first MCU film that you watch and you won't be lost. Like, Kevin Feige's designed the MCU, so you can use any one of their movies as an entry point, as your entry point into the MCU, and you're never going to feel lost. Now, that has begun to change a little bit with WandaVision and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I'm not sure. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is the first Marvel film that I'm not sure I could recommend to somebody as being their first Marvel film, you know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, and with Star Wars, I hope they don't get into that. I hope that once we get to the Ahsoka series, even if it is really just Rebels, the live action series, that it's going to be set up in such a way that you're not going to feel lost because you didn't watch that other stuff. At least that's the hope, man. That's the hope. All right. Next up here, we've got Ahmed, who writes, hey, John, wishing you a happy new year. Thank you. And prayers that we get a Matt Reeves Batman 2 soon. I'm with, dude, it's already been a year since that movie came out. And we don't have any information. They haven't even finished a script. It's a little frustrating. But hopefully we get one soon. All right. The filmmaking and fandom something or other. When will we see the first Dune Part 2 trailer? Well, when does it, guys, help me in the live chat. When does Dune Part 2 come out? Because it comes out near the end of the year, does it not? Like, what's it got, like a November release date? I'm looking for you guys in the live. November, okay. So King Tantic is saying November, so is Aries Pork. So, I mean, I wouldn't expect a Dune trailer till June. Because what, June, July, August, September, October, November. Yeah, I'd say June. June, July, I think is when we'll get. Now they may release a first little tease of something at some point. But yeah, I think June, July is probably the safe bet as to when we'll get the first Dune 2 trailer. All right. Next up, we got Stephen DeLynn Wouters, who sends in like a $20 super chat. Thank you, Stephen, who writes, Disney animation and Pixar movies haven't been doing great at the box office. Even Encanto only made $256 million worldwide. Their last box office successes were back in 2019 with Frozen 2 and Toy Story 4. How can they keep this up? Well, I mean, primarily, there's a couple of, obviously, couple of massive extenuating circumstances to that data. Number one, since 2019, we've had a pandemic. That doesn't explain everything because you had a movie like The Rise of Gru, right, was animated and it did well. Of course, it came out at a different time, but still. So one massive asterisk you have to give there is the fact that since 2019, we've had a pandemic. The second thing is they took a couple of what I feel would have been a couple of their highest box office returning type of films and instead put them on Disney Plus. In particular, Turning Red, which I still, all due respect to Guillermo del Toro, who I love, and his Pinocchio movie, I still think Turning Red was the best animated film of the year. You can argue me all day on that if you want. I just think it's a better film, but whatever. So you got to take that into consideration too. And they had a number of their other ones go direct there as well. So I'm not really sure. But then again, then you had a couple of like Strange World. Nobody thought that movie looked good. Nobody thought that movie looked good at all. Lightyear just confused everybody. Like, what is it? Like Tim Allen put it really well. Nobody knew what it was. Was it a Toy Story movie? Was it not? Was it like and the first part of the movie is great, but then it kind of falls apart after that a bit. So I wouldn't look too much into it or worry too much about it for the next, I don't know. Let's see what happens by the end of 2023. I think we're going to see Disney films rebound. By the way, what's that one called? Elemental? Yeah. I'm telling you right now, that Elemental movie is going to be a hit. I don't mean $1 billion film, but I mean that Elemental movie is going to be a hit. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you right now it will be. Anyway, good question, Stefan. All right. And by the way, just to let you guys know, I just had to turn off the super chats because we got to flood more. So we got all the ones that we can handle today. All right, let's keep going here. Joe V writes, just saw Once Upon a Time in America extended. I love Morricone's score, and I thought the romantic plot was heartbreaking. What do you think of the film? Well, the thing is, you can't go back to that film without talking about the entire era. I mean, you're talking about Hollywood icons. Actually, Rob and I, when we did, right before we did our thing on, not Hateful Eight, sorry. Why am I freezing on it? Django. Right before we did our thing on Django, which of course, that and the Hateful Eight and all that kind of stuff was really influenced by all that thing. We did a whole discussion on that. But yeah, look, first of all, I am proud of you, Joe V, because a lot of people do not watch that kind of content today. And I'm glad that you are. So thank you for raising that. All right. Next up, we got Cash who writes, where do we go? I'm lost, guys. Oh, there we are. Cash writes 1 of 2. Hey, John, I know you don't care for the Scream movies. Recently, you mentioned how it needs to move away from its commentary and referential humor. Well, no, I didn't. I wasn't. Anyway, let's get to the second part of your question. Oh, apparently there is no second part of your question. Oh, okay. So I don't. Oh, that is. Sorry, I'm looking for 2 of 2. That was right above it. Okay. To me, it's not really a Scream movie without it. Same goes for Ghostface shtick. Glad you're excited for 6. I just hope it's not too different. It has to get different. I mean, listen, while I admittedly liked the most recent Scream movie, and I did. I had a good time with the most recent Scream movie. I was surprised, but hey, pleasantly so. I liked the movie. It's got to change because part of the reason I think people like me, now it's got a lot of fans, but there are people like me who just kind of find the series to be kind of nonsensical, which I suppose every horror series should have a sense of nonsensical to it. But like this, again, to me, the big problem with Scream is that there is no central antagonist. Jason is Jason. Freddy is Freddy. Michael is Michael. Hannibal Lecter is Hannibal Lecter. And however odd you want to go. There's no legacy. Ghostface is not an actual entity in these movies. Ghostface is a mask that I guess you can order on Amazon that anybody, any lunatic who wants to go stabby can anybody just put it on and just go do it. And to me, that's one of the central weaknesses of that, why I can't get like connected to the series or anything like that, because unlike other horror franchises where you have your strong central antagonist, Scream does not have that. And I find it really misses that. That doesn't mean you can't be really fun. Again, I quite enjoyed the last one. But yeah, they need to not just keep leaning on the same stuff that they do. And I thought they did it in kind of a unique, different way in this last movie. And the next one is going to be taking in a different city, like in New York. So we'll see what they do. I have to admit, I really like the trailer. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Thanks for that, Cash. Next up, we have Stephen Litton Routers who writes, did you see Strange World yet? I personally think it's vastly underrated, and I have a feeling it eventually become a cult classic like Atlantis and Treasure Planet. Any thoughts? I didn't bother watching it. Just straight up, to be honest, I didn't bother watching it. I knew from the moment I saw, they showed us a presentation of it back at CinemaCon in April, and they showed us a bunch of footage, and I just thought it looked not good at all. And then when I started hearing from a lot of people that I know that also did not like it at all, that was like, well, why am I going to spend my time on it? Why am I going to waste my energy on it? Now, that doesn't mean that people can't like it and enjoy it. You clearly watched it and you enjoyed it. I'm just saying, I know I talked to a lot of people that didn't. So I'm glad that you did, but yeah, I'm probably never going to sit down and watch Strange World. I mean, there's just too much content that I need to watch that actually looks good to me. So, but hey, man, the important thing is you sat down and watched it and you had a good time doing it. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all that matters, my friend. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on it. All right. Next up, Josh Becker writes, did you see the Little Mermaid trailer got leaked the same way the first two No Way Home trailers got leaked? Maybe it's released in HD soon. What are we talking about? I thought the Strange... I'm sorry. I thought the Little Mermaid trailer was flat out released. Was it leaked? How did I see it? Maybe I saw it in a movie theater and it wasn't supposed to be online. Like the much longer one where she's swimming under the water. There's a new one? Is there? Like one that's not just her swimming through the whatever longer extended cut of her swimming through the underwater kingdom and singing, I want to be, like, just, there's another one like with actual dialogue and stuff. Huh. All right. I didn't know about that, Josh. Thank you for putting that on my radar. Now I'm going to have to go and look for it. If anybody's got a link to it and you want to send it to me at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Once again, my show email address is john@thejohncampeashow.com. By the way, before we get on the next question, little announcement, nothing big. For those of you who are watching that are channel members, and by the way, a deep, heartfelt thank you to all of you for being channel members. But specifically, for those of you who are producer level channel members, a little announcement, just a tiny little thing. I have a little movie that I forgot to bring up here, but give me a second. I will bring it up here in just a moment. I've got a little movie that I made during the waning days of the pandemic called Movie Trailers, A Love Story. And that doesn't look good there. Maybe I'll bring it up here on screen for us for a second. There we go. Movie Trailers, A Love Story. You guys have probably heard, that I worked about it during like the entire pandemic. We released near the end of the pandemic. Anyway, it's available on Amazon Plus Amazon Prime and Vimeo and not Vimeo. What's it called? Vimeo. There it is. That's where it's also. Anyway, for those of you who are producer level members, I am going to be putting my movie trailers, a love story, up for our channel level members. Producer, what? I'm so sorry. I've got people trying to text me business stuff, and my brain is getting divided here. Let me try this again. We are going to be putting up my movie trailers, a love story, on the YouTube channel for our producer level members to watch. So thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, just a little bit of a heads up there. All right, let's get back to the questions here before these text messages keep disrupting me. All right, let's see. Josh Becker writes again, with the M. Night's new film coming out, Knock at the Cabin, which looks really good. Do you have a favorite or least favorite film of his? I like Split the most and probably Old the least. Easily. It's not only his worst film, but I would argue a top 10 worst major Hollywood wide release film in history. And I don't mean that with any hyperbole. I believe The Lady in the Water is a top 10 worst film, wide release Hollywood film in the history of Hollywood. I think it's that bad. So to me, there's no doubt that's his worst film. Now, it becomes a more fun discussion talking about his best ones because he's got some great ones. Unbreakable was a superhero origins film that was way ahead of its time. Split was also, really, really good. Glass, unfortunately, was not very good. At all. I might have to go back to the one that really put it. Well, okay. Number one, The Visit is actually quite good. That was the first film that gave us a sign that M. Night was coming out of his long, dark, creative funk. Because The Visit came and said, oh boy, here comes another M. Night movie. But The Visit's actually quite good. I like that movie. Signs is quite good up until the last 5 minutes. But I'd say take away the last 10 minutes. Take away the last 10 minutes of Signs, and I think that is a brilliant movie. I thought the ending was weak, but you take away the last 10 endings, I think Signs is brilliant. What's the one about the one living? Is it just called The Village? What's the one where all the people are living in like the 1500s in the forest? It is called The Village, right? Thank you, Irene. Called The Village. The Village was too dull and predictable, but he's got a number of ones that are really great. I actually got to go back to Sixth Sense. I know that's the first one, but Sixth Sense, I rewatched that a couple of years ago. It's forget just the big twist ending. It's fantastic. I thought it was a really, really great film. So yeah, that's mine. All right. Next up, Josh Becker writes, will you be talking about the Oscar noms on Tuesday? Yes, we're going to do our final Oscar predictions on Monday, tomorrow. And then Tuesday, we're definitely going to, when the Oscar nominations come out on Tuesday morning, we're definitely going to be talking about the Oscar nominations on Tuesday morning. All right, Stephen Delin Routers writes, question about the workings of the show. With technology and software constantly improving, do you expect the crew to keep themselves up to date with everything, like take courses and stuff? I have never made the crew, particularly the people that really got to stay up to date are Jonathan and Ray. And with Ray, I never have to worry about. Ray is always keeping himself up to date with the newest stuff, particularly when it comes to Photoshop and all those sorts of things. With video editing, Jonathan keeps himself up to date with all that kind of stuff. And then when it comes to live streaming technology, I keep myself up to date. And then anything I feel that they need to know, I will teach them. So like I taught Jonathan everything about OBS and how to run the show and all that kind of stuff. So with that sort of thing, because I'm a tech head, I will keep up on all that stuff, and the stuff I feel that I need to bring into the show, I'll just teach them that stuff. Great question. I love the question, Stefan. Thanks for that, man. All right. Josh Becker writes, I just rewatched the original Aladdin, and I think it might be my favorite Disney animated film. R.I.P. to the late, great Robin Williams and Gilbert Gottfried. I'll tell you what, my favorite animated film of all time is Disney's Lion King, but Aladdin ranks right up there. Aladdin ranks right up there. It's just, I went back and watched it before the Will Smith Aladdin came out, which, by the way, I know we all kind of snickered at the Will Smith Aladdin before it came out. It's really good. Like that Aladdin film, it's not as good as the original, but the Will Smith, Guy Ritchie, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you do check it out. But yeah, you're right, man. That original one is just aces, absolute aces. All right. Danito writes, have you changed your mind on Eagles prospects at all? Here's the thing, though. I got to say, the Eagles looked real good last night, but they looked real good against what I thought was the worst team in the playoffs. I thought the Giants were the worst team in the playoffs. Good enough to be in the playoffs. Respect, showed big improvement this year. But I believe out of all the teams that were in the playoffs, I believe they were the weakest team in the playoffs. So they looked really good, but they looked really good. Let's see how they look against the 49ers. Because I believe the 49ers will trounce, and maybe not trounce, but the 49ers will defeat the Cowboys today. So we'll see. Because if they do play the 49ers, and if the Eagles can handle the 49ers, then they will be my favorites going into the Super Bowl. I just don't think they can beat the 49ers. But we'll see. We'll see. They looked really, really good last night. All right. Next up, Cody John Walker sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Cody, who writes, read an article from the Hollywood Reporter that Black Panther 2 and Ant-Man 3 may get a release in China next month. We've been talking about that all week, actually. Thoughts? Maybe Black Panther 2 breaks $1 billion and Ant-Man 3 possible for office increases. Glad the China hiatus may be over. Here's the thing. China has continued over the last couple of years to allow some films, but China, you know what? You know those editorial videos I've been making? Which, by the way, instead of me playing the music when we take a break here in a few minutes, I'm going to play one of my editorial videos that I put up like last week about the fake Sony film critic. We'll get to that in a bit. But I think my next one is going to be about Marvel and China. I think that's going to be the next little info video that I do. So look for that to maybe go online Tuesday or Wednesday. But we've been talking about that all week. Here's the thing. China has a quota, a maximum number of American films that they allow to come into their thing. So people have been saying, oh, Marvel's been banned. Marvel hasn't been banned. There's a quota. It shrunk. And only a small amount of Hollywood films get to play in there. But yeah, they're coming back. But here's the thing about Black Panther. Everybody seems to think that if Black Panther 2 played in China, it would have made like $300 million more dollars. Here's the reality. The first Black Panther did play in China, and it made $100 million. Considering the returns on Black Panther, because it did not have its main star and it did not have its main character, have dropped across the board, that means even if it played in China, it wouldn't have made $1 billion. Because the first one, so even if it made the same amount the first one did, which was 100 million, you add 100 million to 820, that's still not $1 billion. And I don't think Black Panther will make more. I don't think Black Panther 2 will make more than Black Panther 1 did in China. So I don't think that's going to be that much of a difference. I also don't think Ant-Man is that big of a thing in China. So maybe 100 million, 200 million. So we'll see. But yeah, it's a great question, Cody. But I think I am going to be doing my next little info video on that. So there's that. All right. Thanks for writing that in, and thanks for the support, man. Next up. Eddie Burton writes, hey, John, any thoughts on the potential sale of WWE? It's all hearsay as to who's interested, but I've read Disney, Warner Media, Comcast are among those interested in buying it. Yeah, I think the most common sense one is Comcast because WWE already has a working relationship with Peacock. Peacock is, of course, owned by Universal, which is, of course, owned by Comcast. Comcast owns Peacock. That seems to be the most likely spot for it. With Bob Iger in charge of Disney and him leaning more into his family-friendly content, I don't know. I'll be a little surprised. I'll be honest with you. I'll be a little surprised if Disney ends up getting it. But my guess is it'll be Comcast, but we'll keep our eyes on it. All right. Jai CSC writes, "Hey John, just curious. Are the sponsorship videos compiled and created by yourself, or is it stock footage provided by your sponsors? We put them together." Well, I mean, let me rephrase. So what we do for our sponsor spots is we'll find if they have any footage that they do have. And then otherwise, we just put the video track of us going through their website so you guys can actually see what it is we're talking about. And by the way, like our sponsors, you would think, being desperate, low-level YouTubers that we are, you'd think we would take any sponsor that comes along. You guys would be surprised how many sponsors we turn down. We are absolutely dedicated here to only taking sponsors that we really legitimately like or really legitimately use. Now, DraftKings is one of our sponsors. I don't use DraftKings because you can't use online sports wagering apps in California. So we can't, I have no way to access it. But I love DraftKings and I wish I could be a part of it. It's available in a lot of states in the US, but not in California. So yeah, I that's one that I don't use. And that's why I'm very careful to say in our ad spot, I don't say that I use it because I'm in California. I'm not allowed to use it, but God, I would. I would have a lot of fun with that. Anyway, but yeah, they send us notes, like a bulletin sheet, say, hey, when you're doing your promo spot, make sure you target, you hit at least a couple of these points. And then the one thing that they ask is the only thing that they script is the last little call to action, it's called. So right now, go to masterclass.com/Campea for this, and this. That's the only part of the script, or that's the only thing that is scripted. Everything else I write, we record. Here's the process of it. I will first write the promo spot. I take the notes that the sponsor sends us, and then I write the script for it. And then I audio record myself doing the voiceover of the spot. I edit that audio, take out all the ums and breaks and whatever, and I edit it down. I then balance out the audio, put a little finish on it, and then I take that audio file and I give it to Jonathan. Jonathan takes that audio file, and then what he'll do, he'll start to gather assets that belong to one of the sponsors, and then he'll go on the sponsor's website and video capture video of himself scrolling through the site, trying to make sure he gets to certain parts of the site as I'm talking about them in the script. We put that all together, he exports it out, and then we play it for you guys during the show. So that is the process of how we make our little sponsor spots during the show. Great question. Thank you for asking about that. I love these technical questions. All right. Josh Becker writes, who you got for the games? I got Bengals and 49ers. I also have Bengals and 49ers, which is really weird because the Bills were my pick to win the Super Bowl this year. But I think the Bengals are coming together. They're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I think the Bills have not lived up to their potential this year. So, I mean, I would love to see the Bills win, but I think it's going to be Bengals and 49ers, but we'll see. All right. Randall Cartwright writes, okay, now there's more time to answer. What made you decide to go to Bible college? Thanks you all. Well, I'm not going to take, here's the thing, Randall, I can't take 20 minutes here to give a full 20-minute answer. But I was all I'll say is I was very active in my church and in my youth groups and stuff like that. And I was really inspired by the guy who ran our youth department at our church. And I decided I wanted to do that. And so, yeah, I went to Bible College Seminary, studied that, and there it was. Of course, now I obviously don't work in that field anymore, but yeah, that's what inspired me there. Was the guy who ran my youth department was kind of my main inspiration. All right, let's see. Daniel Vakura writes, with the outbreak in The Last of Us happening in 2003 and not 2013, that means Star Wars died with Attack of the Clones. The outbreak happened right before the release of Rise of Revenge. What? You know what? I can't do acronyms all that much. Oh, now you're talking about Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I didn't. You know what? I never thought about that. The repercussions of what it means the pop culture of that world with the outbreak happening in 2003. I've never even thought of it in those terms before. All right. Chris Martin writes, haven't written in a while. How was your Christmas and New Year? My Christmas and New Year were great, thank you. My friend got me Clay Aiken and Ruben Studdard. I've heard of Clay Aiken, I've never heard of Ruben Studdard concert tickets for their 20th anniversary tour since they've been on American Idol. Oh, that's right. Those are American Idol guys. Oh, that Ruben, now I remember that Ruben, he was the big guy, right? That Ruben Studdard, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. That dude had a great voice. I remember thinking, like, not many people on these shows do I actually think are actually all that good most of the time. But every once in a while you get some people. But that dude, though, he had a terrific voice. That's great that they're still doing that kind of stuff. That sounds like a really interesting Christmas gift. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Chris. Daniel Vakura writes, I lost a lot of respect for Warner Brothers Discovery in the last week, which wouldn't let AEW air a tribute show to Jay Briscoe due to 10-year-old comments he atoned for where he became a better person. Then WBD goes ahead with Dana White's power slap after what White did to his wife. I know capitalism rules with corporations, but it's gross. Yeah, but I'll be honest with you, Daniel, that's a hugely oversimplification of the situation. And it's also based on a lot of unconfirmed rumors and reports, but that's a vastly oversimplified way of looking at that. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into it here because we're not going to get into the politics of this, that, and the other thing. We're just not going to do it. But I will just say that, now granted, you only have a few characters to write, like you don't have 5 pages to write out your full thoughts, but I just think that's a bit of an oversimplification. Again, I'm not justifying that anybody did on any level on either side. I'm just saying that's one very specific way of looking at the situation, but I'll just leave it at that. All right. Check the Mystery writes, hey, John, what do you think is the best George Clooney acting performance? Mine is definitely Michael Clayton. He was really good in that. Tom Wilkinson is excellent also. I think my favorite acting performance. You know what? Give me 1 second here. I want to bring that up. I want to take a look. I'm going to bring up Clooney's. Hold on a second. I want to look up Clooney's IMDb here. Now that you mention it. Let's see here. Oh, I loved, not his best movie, but I loved him in Ides of March. His performance in Ides of March was great. Also, Up in the Air. Up in the Air was absolutely fantastic. Let's see what else. He wasn't so great in Tomorrowland. He was great in Monuments Men. Wasn't very good. At least it wasn't great, but he was great in Monument Men. The Descendants, he's fantastic in. Man, you know what? I don't know. I mean, I think my favorite film of his will always it'll be the Ocean's films. I'm a sucker for the Ocean's films just because I really like, I like heist stuff, but yeah, a bunch of good ones there. But Michael Clayton, I mean, it's hard to argue against Michael Clayton, but yeah, there's a lot of them. Burn After Reading. Tom in the live chat was mentioning Burn After Reading. Yep. He's really good. Like, he's really, really good. Even when he's in not so good movies, he himself is always really, really good. All right. Next up, Matthew. No, it's another one from Check the Mystery, who writes, if James Gunn does open the new DCU with a Superman film that he directs, over under 40% that he uses John Williams' theme for the character. Over. Not 90, not 85, but I think he uses the John Williams Superman theme. I think Gunn is way too much of a Hollywood fanboy and Hollywood historian. And I think he would. Now, it should not be Hans Zimmer's Henry Cavill Superman. That theme, while it is, I listen to it at least 2 or 3 times a week. the Hans Zimmer Superman theme, what are you going to do when you're not saving the world? I love that, but that's really, really just identified with Henry. The Superman theme, while you can argue it's identified with Christopher Reeve, I would argue that for generations of people, it's just identified with Superman. And so, yeah, I think a higher than 40% chance that he does, that he takes the John Williams fee. Again, not 90%, but I'll take over 40. All right, Matthew Medina writes, Jonathan Major's new film, Magazine Daydreams, is Pulp Fiction meets Boogie Nights with Joker vibes, a bodybuilder with self-destruction born of rage. I'm not even familiar with it. I read, though, that Major's put on, like for this and for, obviously for Creed 3, I read he put on over 45 pounds of muscle. I mean, he was already a naturally big guy, but I read he put on like 45 pounds of muscle. Now, I didn't see that from him, so maybe that number's being exaggerated, but that dude looks stoked. All right, Just a Sub 32 writes, hey, John, I have 3 questions. Well, maybe I'll just answer one. Number 1, what region of Canada are you from? I'm from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, although I've lived in Western Canada as well. I'm from Hamilton, Ontario. That's right an hour outside of Toronto, just so you know. 2, how cold does it typically get? It depends on where you are in Canada. In like Hamilton, Toronto, it's just the same as New York. Right? So you have all 4 seasons. It can get kind of cold in the winter, but we're really not all that far from New York and Michigan and all that kind of stuff. Basically the same temperate zone. And if you go way north Canada and you get into, like, I lived in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada for a number of years, and there it could get to like minus 40 in the winters. Beautiful summers, beautiful falls, beautiful springs, but winter got really, really, so it all, listen, you got a lot of Americans don't realize this. From a geography point of view, Canada is much larger than the US. Like, it is a big ass hunk of land, like a big ass hunk of land. So we have multiple temperate zones, right? So it varies wildly from the most populated parts of Canada, Vancouver, Toronto, Canada, that kind of stuff, to the much further up you go. It can get way colder depending how far north you go. 3, what culture shocks did you experience when you first moved to the US? This is going to sound like a typical Canadian thing to say. Canada and the US share like 90% of pop culture, right? We have our differences. You know, Americans aren't really tuned into hockey. Canadians understand hockey is the greatest sport on earth. So little changes like that. But, you know, Canadians love their NFL football. We watch our Hollywood movies. Did you know that when you quote the domestic box office, that's not the US, that's the US and Canada? True. This is absolutely true. When you hear that such and such movie made $100 million domestically, domestically is actually means Canada and the US. It does, literally does. It's not just the US. So that's just kind of an example of how we share a lot of pop culture. I honestly found, and I know this is going to sound like a very Canadian thing to say, I know, but the whole stereotype of Canadians being polite and nice and stuff like that, that's a big difference from down here. Like, I remember one of the times I took Anne up to Canada, like she was confused. Like, we'd be driving down the highway, and she needed to get into another lane, and she would turn on, as soon as she would turn on her turn signal, you'd see cars start to slow down to try to make room for her to come in because she has her turn signal on, right? And she just couldn't believe this. Like, Anna's like, what's going on? Like, normally you turn on the turn signal and you wait for 5 or 6 more cars to go by until you see a little bit more of a gap, and then you force your way in. She goes, here, every time I turn on my turn signal, cars start to slow down to make room for me. I'm like, yeah, because you're notifying them that you need to change lanes. So we apply the brakes a little bit so you can get in. But I just remember Anne was like, what's going on? This is suspiciously weird. And, but yeah, it was that sort of thing, especially because when I first moved to the US, when I first moved down to LA, I moved right into Hollywood. I lived right by the Sunset Strip. Like, I moved right on into Hollywood, and I lived right on Sunset Boulevard, right by La Brea, which is right like a 6-minute walk from where the Oscars are held. Right. I moved right down there, and that was a big, big culture shock just from like, I mean, yeah, I don't want to get anything that sounds like I'm bad mouthing anybody, but that was one of the big differences. That was one of the huge differences for me. All right, we'll move on here. Next one up, Matthew Medina writes, Daisy Ridley's film out of Sundance is called Sometimes I Think About Dying, a dark, poetic, macabre film. It asks many deep questions about existence. I love films like that. They never do well financially, but I am very, very curious because I actually think Daisy Ridley's a really good actress, and she's just been in some really bad things. And I am very curious to see how her career is able to evolve post Star Wars, post Rey. It's going to be really neat to see how she does. This will obviously not be a big breakout one because, I mean, it's not going to get picked up for wide release or anything like that, but it's definitely a really cool song. It sounds kind of like what Daniel Radcliffe did after Harry Potter, just taking more indie, heavier roles. Maybe this will work out for her really well. Thanks for sharing that, Matthew. Matthew also writes, does COVID make The Last of Us much more horrifying? I think it makes a bigger impact on people because, yeah, I mean, we literally spent a couple of years like staying in our homes. Crazy. But you're right. That makes this a really good time for it. Matthew also writes, Panasonic Lumix good for street photography. I'm not much one into photography. Usually when I'm with the camera, I'm strictly looking at its video performance. So I'm looking at sensor size. And honestly, like a lot of the Panasonic stuff, so you have your full frame cameras that are a little bit more expensive for wide. Then you have your APS-C sensor cameras. Those are like 35 mil sensors, right? They're called crop sensors, but they're still quite good sensors. They're still a good size. The Panasonic Lumix line uses the Micro Four Thirds sensor, if I'm remembering correctly. They use the 4/3 sensor, which I don't like as much. So I would look at if you're looking at still photography, I have no idea. If you're talking about video quality, I would look at one of the Sony cameras in that sense. I think that might, but the Canon M50 Mark II, which I use the Sonys in the main studio. This camera here is the Canon M50 Mark II. It also uses an APS-C sensor, just like our Sony cameras. So, and the Canon M50 Mark II, I think you can get for like $500. And it has, interchangeable lenses and all that kind of stuff. So that might be one you want to look at. Again, I'm just not a big fan of the 4/3 sensor, but that's just me. All right. Next up, we got Daniel Vakura writes, do you ever get frustrated with people pulling revisionist history on media? Well, yes, all the time. I do. For example, Filoni's Clone Wars wasn't well received in its first 1 or 2 seasons. Plus the film. Season 3 was said to be too political after the clone episodes. Ahsoka was hated where people act now like the whole show is great. It's just not. It's very up and down, which is why season 7 was a microcosm of the show with its quality. Then people claiming Game of Thrones went downhill when it got past the books. Season 6 went past the books and it was acclaimed with the Battle of the Bastards. It's better than season 5. Feels disingenuous when people do that. Yeah, listen, revisionist history is, particularly with fandom, something that I find we are all susceptible to. Like, here's another great example. When The Last Jedi came out, and obviously that's a divisive film. I like the film in general, but I have some major issues with it. But I did like it in general. But this is an example. Like, the people who really hated The Last Jedi then come out and say, well, he's never been a good director. Oh, really? Before The Last Jedi, you didn't think Brick was good, and you didn't think Looper was good, and you thought, no, his movies really aren't that good. Where before The Last Jedi, they would have told you, oh yeah, those movies are really good. But that's just another example. I mean, I'm the wrong guy to ask about Clone Wars because I've never been a fan of Clone Wars, right from the original movie, which is like the second worst thing Star Wars has ever done, other than the Christmas special. And when I say the movie, I mean the animated movie they did, not the Star Wars, the Clone Wars, but like the animated movie. Or not Attack of the Clones, but the Clone Wars, the animated film. That was just horrible. And I never really did like the series. It's funny because the exact same people who made Clone Wars are the same people that made Rebels, and I actually quite liked Rebels. Like I liked Rebels quite a bit, but I was never into the Clone Wars. But yeah, now everybody talks about like it was gold from day one, and it's like, no, I remember not a lot of people loving the Clone Wars when it started. What are you talking about? But it is. But listen, Daniel, it happens a lot with a lot of different franchises, and if we're all honest, we're probably all guilty of it to one degree or another. But that doesn't make it any less frustrating. Like I completely agree with you. All right. Luke 123 writes, Last of Us drops at 6 p.m., not midnight. Thoughts? Well, I mean, all HBO shows have always done that. Like HBO shows, at least as far as I can remember, they don't drop at midnight. Now, you could say that Last of Us drops 6 hours earlier than the Star Wars shows do, or that the Disney Plus shows do, right? You could say that. Or you could say, no. Star Wars drops and Disney Plus drops their shows 18 hours earlier than HBO. Because here's the thing. When HBO says we have a show dropping on Sunday, January 22nd, that means at 6 p.m. on Sunday, January 22nd. When Disney Plus says we drop our show on Sunday, January 22nd, what that really means is that it's actually dropping at Saturday at midnight plus 1 second. That being said, so it's not that HBO drops their shows 6 hours earlier, it's that Disney Plus drops their show 18 hours earlier. That being said, I do prefer them dropping it at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. I mean, just when the world can all tune in and watch together. I just really do prefer that than the midnight release. But hey, listen, the midnight releases is working for Disney Plus, so I can't even criticize it all that much. But I do prefer like the 6 p.m. release. Actually, you know what? Let me, for those of you guys watching live, I'm going to go and I want to create a poll in here. Do you prefer, so I'm going to try this again. Do you prefer midnight drops on TV or say 6 p.m.-ish? So I'm going to put midnight as one option and 6-ish as the other. Oops, I misspelt 6. How did I misspell 6? It's just the number 6. There we go. All right, so for those of you guys who are watching live right now, I just put that up as a poll. Now, for me, I personally lean towards the 6 p.m.-ish. I like the fact that we know exactly what time you can have friends over to watch it with you, right? Can't really do that with midnight screenings, with midnight drops and stuff like that. But, okay, so what do we got going on here? We have so far 168 of you guys have voted so far. And right now, 76% of you are saying 6-ish, 24% are saying midnight. All right. So it's kind of close. I mean, it's closer than I thought. Now 75-25. Interesting. Now we're rounding up to about 300 votes. Okay, sticking right around 75%. All right. Good to know, guys. I will end that poll now, and we will continue on with our questions. Okay, next up. Luke 1234 writes, my favorite film is RoboCop, but I fear that the franchise is looked at poorly as a whole. Do you think it should be given another movie or TV series? I'll be honest with you. I don't really know where you go with it. Like, the original RoboCop movie's fantastic. No doubt. Absolutely is fantastic. By the way, I don't care what anybody says. I thought the RoboCop remake they did a couple years ago with Michael Keaton as the bad guy, I thought it was pretty good. Not as good as the original, but a lot of people, you know what? I'm sorry, I don't agree. I watched that movie with an open mind. I actually think it's a pretty good movie. Again, not as good as the original, but I thought it was pretty good. I really don't know that there's anywhere for... I don't know if the story of RoboCop is interesting beyond that interesting concept of it. So I don't know. It's a good question, though. All right. Next up, we've got Big Mouth Stan, who writes, "Hey, John, I recently you probably mean saw. I recently saw that VFX workers think it's time to unionize because of underpayment, systematic pixel effing, and overworking. The biggest culprit is Marvel Studios," they stated. Thoughts? Well, okay, look. So I clearly, you guys know I worked in the VFX industry for a while. The fundamental systemic problem is the system under which it operates, which is the same that like a lot of construction systems. So like, when you have let's say you're a city, right? And the city needs Main Street torn up and repaved. It's a big job. It's an expensive job. So what the city does is they put out a tender out to all the all the road civil construction companies in town with a full description of what needs to be done in the job. And then all the different construction companies submit a bid. They see all the requirements the city has to rebuild that street. And so they're, pencil pushers and peanut counters and calculator hitters, they figure out, okay, we can do that job and we can make Main Street for you for this amount of money. Well, you can't price it too high or else the other construction company is going to bid lower than you, right? So you try to make it as low as you can while still making it doable. And then you submit that bid to the city, and then the city, picks one. That is the system under which most visual effects happen. A film project puts together this concept of what the project is, and they give it out to the various visual effects houses. And then the visual effects houses go through and they figure, what can we do this for? How cheap can we do this for? And then they price it so low, because it's a very, very competitive market. They have to price it so low and now you got to get the job done, that it ends up that visual effects artists and people, they are working. I remember ultimately we brought cots into our offices where I was at with our visual effects company at the time. And like when we're in the middle of a big job, like we'd literally just be sleeping there. Like 4 a.m, we'd run to 7-Eleven and grab a Slurpee or something, come right back, and we'd just be working around the clock. And that's how so the whole system needs to be relooked at. I think it would be a good idea for visual effects artists to unionize. Because under the current system, everybody has to bid as low as possible, and it kind of forces you to, like, listen, there are companies that went out of business because they won the bids. Like they'd win a bid, but at the end of the day, they bid so low on it that it lost the money and the company went out of business, while working their people to the bone. And so, yeah, it's a system that needs to be overhauled. Here's the problem. I know everybody wants a bad guy. Everybody wants to point out a bad guy. And right now, fuck Disney. I don't have a very high opinion of Disney as a company right now, so they can go fuck themselves. But I will say that whenever we have a heavy issue like this one, like the effects and the work of on people, what we would like to do is we like to have a manifest villain. And we'll go, well, Marvel's the problem. Here's the thing. This issue existed before the MCU existed. You go all the way back to before the MCU was even a big player. Like you go all the way back to Life of Pi, which ultimately drove the visual effects company that won an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects in that movie, but it put them out of business. This has been around before Marvel. The thing is, we like to make Marvel the scapegoat, the face of the villain, right? They're the villain, right? But that's only because they're the ones who put out the most work. And so in a system that's already broken, and in a system, and maybe I should make another one of the explainer videos on this, but in a system that is already broken, in a system that is already has these shortcomings that is causing companies to go out of business and making visual effects workers work ungodly, unhealthy amount of hours. that if you bring somebody else comes along who doubles the amount of work there is, well, on one hand, you think, well, that's great. They're bringing double the work to the industry. But on the other hand, you're thinking, but if you're bringing double the work to an industry that's already broken, it's only going to make it more broken. The problem isn't Marvel. It's that Marvel brings the business in a business that is fundamentally flawed. And they got to fix it. And I think unionization may be one of the things they have to look at, or they have to do collective bargaining, and all the visual effects companies have to form an organization. Like the Directors Guild has an organization, this Actors Guild. Maybe the visual effects companies need to create some kind of an organization where they collectively bargain with the Hollywood studio system, or the PGA, the Producers Guild of America, where they collectively bargain with them, just like the Directors Guild does, the Screen Actors Guild does, IATSE does. Maybe visual effects need to do it on a more specialized level, because something's got to give. Something's got to give. Anyway, all right, let's keep going here. Next up, we got Rachel Knight, who writes, why does Smokey the Bear wear pants but no shirt? And why? You know what? And why does Winnie the Pooh wear a shirt but no pants? These are the deep questions of the day, Rachel. I don't know. It's a very good question. What's Nerdy Podcast, right? If the Avatar films continue with this quality of story, do you think that by the end of the franchise, the fifth film could break the first record? There's too many variables in that question. Like, it all depends. What is the nature of the box office and theater going to be like in, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years? It's hard to say. Right now, I don't see any film ever passing Endgame or the first Avatar. I think Avatar and Endgame will keep leapfrogging over each other as they do re-releases and everything, but I don't know. Right now, I don't think any film ever will. But again, let's get into that other era, because who knows what the theater landscape is and the box office and the nature of the box office is going to be, 6, 7 years from now. It's hard to say. All right, Ryan Ramirez writes, do you think a movie like Tropic Thunder / White Chicks could be made today with the way cancel culture or people being too sensitive these days? Thanks. Yes. Yeah, I totally do. It's because of the satiric nature of it. I think, like, I hear a lot of people say, oh, you could never make the Tropic Thunder today. Yeah, you can. Because of the satirical nature of it, I think it is what gives it a pass. I think the same thing. It's funny. I don't know why you brought up White Chicks, but fucking Taylor, every day after the show, he puts on the stupidest shit on our TV while people are working. But he decided to put on White Chicks the other day. I kid you not. It was this week. He was having White Chicks playing. And I was watching a bit of it. I'm like, yeah, you could do that movie today. I totally think you could do Tropic. A lot of people say you could never make The Office today. I've even heard some of The Office cast members say, oh yeah, we couldn't make that today. Yes, I totally believe you totally can, because it's done with such a tongue-in-cheek satirical nature and you understand the characters. I 100% believe. I think everybody who says that you couldn't do that today, I think you're completely wrong. I think absolutely you could. I mean, it'd be different, but I think you absolutely could. But that's just my opinion. I know it's the unpopular one. All right. Rachel Knight writes, what performance in a movie or show did you see and instantly knew that the actor / actress was going to be big? For me, it was Oscar Isaac in Sucker Punch. I think for me, it was, even though he had done stuff before it, it was James Franco. Like when I saw him in Spider-Man, I remember telling people, this dude's going to be really big. This dude's going to be this dude who plays Spider-Man's friend in the movie. That guy, I don't even know his name. It's James something or other. I remember saying that dude is going to be, that dude's going to be really big. And sure enough, he did. Now, of course, there's a lot of other stuff that's going on with James Franco in the meantime, but that's one to me that stood out to me. All right. Richard K. writes, we've had Hercules on the big screen with Kellen Lutz and The Rock, but do you think we will get a Xena Warrior Princess movie at some point with either Lucy Lawless returning or with a new actress? Well, yeah, I don't think you can do Xena Warrior Princess with, as much as I love Lucy Lawless, by the way, one of the stars of my second or third favorite television show of all time, Spartacus. But I could see them doing a Xena Warrior Princess reboot. I mean, you'd have to do it a little tongue-in-cheek. It'd be lower budget. But it's a known IP, and right now in Hollywood, known IP is absolute gold. But I don't think, unless Lucy Lawless was playing like another role, but I don't see Lucy Lawless playing Xena herself anymore. All right, let's see here. Big Mouth Stan writes, I know you like the final season of Game of Thrones. I did very much. But do you think the final season would have been more universally loved if Benioff and Weiss waited until George R.R. Martin finished writing the books? No, because that had nothing to do with it. Like it was pointed out earlier in the show, they had already gotten to stuff that was beyond the books, and people were still loving the show. There are two fundamental problems with the final season. One is a real problem, one is not, but people made a big deal out of it. The one real problem with the final season of Game of Thrones, in my opinion, was the inexcusable brevity of it. Like all of a sudden, the final season is going to be, what was it? 6? Help me in the live chat. Was it 6 episodes? That wasn't, the studio wanted the final season to be more episodes. But Benioff and Weiss, we can do it 6. Yeah, Walter White Walker is saying it was 6. So is Dat-Boy22 saying it was 6. There was no excuse for that. And so the weaknesses of the season to me are often kind of are wrapped up in the fact that they had to rush a number of things near the end. I still love the season, but that hurt it. But the real thing is, people get upset when their fan theories don't end up being what the show or movie does. And that's all of us. Like, right? It's not just one little group of people. That's fans in general, we as a group of people, we tend to get our asses a little puckery when the things we totally believed and our speculation and the way we things are going to go, when it does not go that way, we get our asses real puckery. That's what we as fans do. And all of us are guilty of it. All you watching, you've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of that. Everybody's been guilty of that. And I think when they did some of the major resolutions, they just didn't do what they wanted it to do. Right? Just didn't do what they wanted it to do. And it just, I mean, it was so funny because I still to this day, everybody's like, man, they totally changed directions on, why am I freezing on the mother of dragons name? Khaleesi. Man, they totally changed directions on Daenerys, on Khaleesi. Man, they just did a complete 180. And I'm like, guys, since season 3 or 4, I've been telling you they're making it obvious she's going bad. They've been telegraphing it for years and years and years. You can see it. She is going bad. While she puts on this facade that it's all about her cause, they're making it obvious it's all about her. And they're making it obvious. And everybody's, no, they're not, John. No, they're not. They're not taking her bad. I'm like, it's right there. It's all right there. For years, I said it on our after show. For years. And then when they did exactly what I told people for years they were going to do, they got, well, that was out of nowhere. It's like, listen, but it's all art, right? Like we, different people like Game of Thrones and its ending for tons of different reasons. And people dislike Game of Thrones and its ending for a ton of different reasons. Many, 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 many valid reasons. You know, hey, they didn't like the dialogue. They didn't like the narrative structure of it. There's a lot of reasons for it not to work for people. But I do think, you know, there's a couple of them that are just some standard issue traits that we as narrative entertainment fans tend to have that we're also part of it. But, you know, there's a lot of different reasons. All right. Next up, let's see here. Big Mouth Stan writes, if the Lakers don't make the playoffs, should LeBron request a trade? Tired of him wasting his athletic years on this weak, unhealthy roster. No, I think he'll stay. I think he wants to play with his son. And I think the Lakers will be committed to trying to draft his son. But I got to tell you, man, even in a couple of their losses, their comeback win the other night against, what was it, Dallas? Was it? No, it was, I can't remember. They had this big comeback win just the other night. I was at the 76er game. Listen, they are, even in the games they're losing right now, the Lakers are playing much better basketball right now than they were, say, in the first big chunk of the season. And they're doing it without their second biggest star in AD. When AD comes back, I think you're going to see them make a serious. They're not going to win the title this year, but I mean, I think you're going to see them make a serious playoff push, but we'll find out. All right. Next up, Richard K writes, with Ngannou now a free agent, do you see him now going WWE like Rousey and Ken Shamrock did? No, I see him going to Bellator. I think Francis is going to end up in Bellator. And then at some point, cooler heads will prevail and he will come back to the UFC and he will instantly fight for the title. And we'll see where it goes. But no, I don't think he's going to go WWE. I think he's going to go because he's way too young. He has way too much of his career still in front of him. I think you're going to see him go to Bellator and become the heavyweight champion over there. All right. Next up, Richard K writes. Oh no, that was Richard K. Daniel Yount writes. Was there a specific moment in your childhood or teenage years that made you realize you wanted to be involved in the world of film to some capacity? Well, I mean, my earliest childhood memory, though, a lot of you guys know this, my earliest childhood memory was my mom showing me Star Wars. Like that was my earliest childhood memory. And that has been a very major thing. But, okay, long story short. So I had started a blog. I realized in my blog, I was writing mostly about movies I was watching. So I created a separate blog called The Movie Blog. Themovieblog.com. And that became my place just to write about movies and whatever. And, you know, I had like 20, 30 readers and that was great. But then it grew to like 1,000 and then 10,000 and then 100,000 and then like 250,000 readers a month. And I remember this is where it really became, this is going to be my full-time thing. I got my first check from Google. Like I had loaded up, I had added AdSense to my blog and I got my first check from Google and it was for $400, I believe in $50, might've been $425. It was $400 and something dollars. My first check from Google was like for $400 and something dollars. And it was like the craziest thing in the world to me. I got money for doing what I loved. What? Because you understand, I was in school at the time. Like I went back to college in my early 30s. I was in school at the time. I was working at a law firm. Life was going on. I mean, but I was still making time to do my blog and I got like a $400 check. Anyway, once I got that money, a couple of friends of mine held what I call the intervention. A couple of buddies of mine took me to lunch one day and they said, you got to quit your job. You got to quit your job and do this full time because I think you can make a career out of this. And that was the moment that I decided to just go full throttle with it. And there's a lot more details to it, but I won't bore you with it right now. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Daniel. All right. Last question, then we're going to take just a little short break here so I can go refill my drink and rest my voice for a minute. Big Mouth Stan writes, I hope the next Lois Lane they cast in the next DCU films has charisma because Amy Adams just wasn't doing it for me in the DCU personally. Thoughts? Amy Adams is one of the greatest actresses in the world. And I was very excited when I heard about her casting. But it ended up not being the best fit. I think she's quite good in the role, but I think there could have been like actresses who weren't necessarily quite as good as her, but maybe could have fit the role a little bit better and maybe had a little bit better chemistry with Henry Cavill. So yeah, she's definitely one of the greatest actresses in the world, but I think maybe they could have found a little bit of a better fit. Maybe found someone who's a little bit of a better fit. All right. Hey, listen, guys, I'm going to take a break here, but so before I go though, while I'm taking my break, I'm going to play a little video. Some of you may have seen this already, but it's one of these new little editorial videos I've been doing. This one is just a couple of minutes long. It's the one I put up last week about the whole controversy surrounding Sony's fake movie critic thing, for those of you who may have heard of it or not heard of it. So while I take a break and rest my voice and stuff like that, check this out. Here's my little video on the controversy of the Sony fake movie critic. Here it is. Do you remember David Manning, the film critic for Connecticut's Ridgefield Press? The name might sound familiar, or maybe you've never heard of him. We'll get to him in just a minute. Hey there, guys. My name is John Campea, and I host the John Campea Show, a daily 2-hour live stream where we talk about movies and movie news, TV, and streaming. And one of the more interesting stories that we've been following lately is the one about Universal Studios being sued by a group of people over the fact that their 2019 film Yesterday put out trailers showing popular actress Ana de Armas in it. The problem is Ana de Armas isn't in the movie at all. Her scenes were cut from the film, but the studio continued to use her footage in trailers and promotion of the movie even after the movie itself was finished its theatrical run. A U.S. court recently ruled that the plaintiff's case has merit and can proceed to trial. At the heart of this case is the basic idea of false advertising, the notion that the studio is deliberately trying to mislead or deceive the audience, and that brings us to the aforementioned film critic David Manning. Now, we're all accustomed to seeing short review blurbs and quotes on movie posters and trailers. Hell, I've even had a couple of my own quotes pop up in a DVD cover or two over the years. Well, back in 2000 and 2001, film fans started to see the name David Manning of the Ridgefield Press, and man, David loved Sony movies. About the Rob Schneider film The Animal, David said the producing team of Big Daddy had delivered another winner. About the Kevin Bacon horror film Hollow Man, he said, one hell of a scary ride, and talking about A Knight's Tale, he raved about Heath Ledger, calling him this year's hottest new star. He had similar platitudes about other films as well. Pretty standard stuff, right? Sure, except for one small detail. David Manning was not real. The fictitious character was made up by Sony's director of creative advertising at the time, Matthew Kramer was his name. Apparently, Kramer got tired of trying to find enough positive critic quotes, or just the right critic quotes, so he decided he'd just make them up himself. To do this, he took the name of his real hometown newspaper, the Ridgefield Press, and then borrowed the name of his college buddy, David Manning, put them together, and made the film critic David Manning of the Ridgefield Press, and the positive quotes flowed like the spice of Arrakis. Now, you might be asking yourself, how the hell did they get away with this? Well, you have to keep a couple of factors in mind. Number one, people generally don't look and still don't look at the names associated with blurbs on movie posters and marketing. My guess would be that like less than 20% of the people who read the quotes ever actually read the name associated with it below it. Number two, you have to remember that all this happened years before Facebook or Twitter or social media really existed, so information didn't fly around like it does today. And maybe Kramer would have continued to get away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids over at Newsweek, specifically Newsweek reporter John Horn. Now, John Horn knew a lot of people in the entertainment space, and at the time, he was actually working on an article about the film industry's press junkets, but he had never heard of David Manning. And one huge red flag for Horn was the fact that Manning's quote for The Animal was appearing on marketing materials for the movie long before any critics had even seen the movie or there had been any screenings of it. Following up on his suspicions, Horn called the Ridgefield Press, and sure enough, they had never heard of David Manning. Horn contacted Sony directly, who had to confess that Manning wasn't real. Now, once Horn published his article on Newsweek back in June of 2001, the repercussions were swift. Not only was Sony humiliated, but the state's attorney general sued them for over $300,000, and a class action lawsuit against them was successful, forcing them to pay back any fans connected with the lawsuit who bought tickets for the movies the fake Manning review quotes appeared on. Kramer, who came up with the whole scheme, was suspended from the company, and Sony's spokesperson said, "It was an incredibly foolish decision and we're horrified. We are looking into it and we will take appropriate action." Now, the silver lining of this whole David Manning fiasco is that today it brought about much stricter policies and deterrence. The age of social media and rapid deployment of information would make it nearly impossible for something like this to be repeated again. But still, the Universal Studios lawsuit over Yesterday is a reminder that studios will still try to get away with as much as they can when it comes to tricking the audiences into seeing their movies. The story of David Manning reminds us, as fans, to still be watchful. That'll do it for this little video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Come back and visit us for the John Campea Show. My name is John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye. All right, so that was my little editorial video on that. I hope you guys have been enjoying those things. I really like the last one I just did on review bombing and things like that. I hope you guys will check that. If you haven't checked that out, it's on the webpage right now. Just go down to the news and editorial playlist on the main page of the YouTube channel. You can see the newest one is review bombing, and go check that out and let me know what you guys think. All right, with that down, let's get back to it here, shall we? Where did we leave off there? We left off with, oh, there was that. Oh, where do we leave off here? There was a specific moment. Okay, we did that one. Oh, the next Lois Lane. Okay. AM writes, hey, what is the not so mainstream project that you'd like to see announced for the DCU slate? Thanks for all that you do. I'm not really, you know what? No, I take that back. Plastic Man. Ever since the sequel to The Dark Knight Returns, again, I always forget the name of it. Do you guys remember what the name of the sequel comic series was to The Dark Knight Returns? It was called The Dark Knight something. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll wait for one of you guys to answer that in the live chat. So anyway, Plastic Man makes an appearance in that, right? And he is amazing in it. And like where Batman basically lays out in that sequel to The Dark Knight is that he is the most powerful being in the world. Like there's as they're getting ready to free Plastic Man from his containment to release him. Some people are saying, is The Dark Knight Strikes Again? Was that the name of it? Okay, we'll go with that. But as Batman and the Flash and Green Arrow are getting ready to release Plastic Man from his containment, you see this thought bubble about basically Batman worrying that he won't be mentally destroyed because of his containment, because as Batman says in his thought bubble, he could kill us all, ... easily. And ever since that moment in the comics, I've become kind of fascinated with Plastic Man. So I'd actually be interested to see a little bit of that. I think that could be neat. All right. Next up, Greg Hayes writes, I've seen YouTube has made new policy changes again that have some of the folks I follow frustrated and upset again. Do these changes ever affect your channel, and how do you handle them? Yeah, the changes always affect us. It's just some affect us more than others. This new change where it's like, where it's got people really upset is that YouTube has implemented a new change that says you can't swear in the first 8 seconds of your video. They're not saying you can't swear, but if you swear in like the first 8 seconds of the video, your video will be demonetized because advertisers don't want their ads showing up on videos where, I mean, it starts right off with a big fuck or whatever, right? But the part that's got a lot of creators frustrated is that while that is a new policy, YouTube, they haven't done this for all videos, but they have on some. YouTube has the right to go back and find older videos that you did where you swore in the first 8 seconds when you were allowed to, but now you're not, and they can demonetize those older videos. And people get really frustrated with YouTube. I get it. The one thing I wish somebody would address in this whole discourse, though, is that it's not really YouTube. It's the advertisers. If the and look, it's their money. If advertisers tell YouTube, we don't want like F-bombs being dropped in the first 8 seconds of a video that are ads that we're paying for, say the advertisers, we don't want our ads playing on one that does that. Well, that's their prerogative, right? YouTube is trying to keep the advertisers happy because advertisers are the one who pay the bills. Advertisers are not just the ones who pay YouTube. Ultimately, the advertisers are the one who pay YouTubers. And everybody's getting frustrated at YouTube, and I get it because it's a little bit of a frustrating policy. But if that policy change is coming directly from the people paying the bills, listen, as an advertiser, you have a right to say where you do and do not want your advertisers lining up. And if the advertisers collectively come to YouTube and say, you know, we're not comfortable with our ads playing on videos that do this, well, we can agree or disagree with them, but it's their money. They're the one paying for the ad spots. So if they come to that, then what's YouTube supposed to do? YouTube's got to go, okay, then we're going to create a new policy where, you know, there can't be swearing in the first 8 seconds or something. Anyway, but for the most part, listen, even though we swear once in a while on the show, we're not an expletive ridden, and except for those like once every 3 or 4 months that I get really upset about something and I start swearing my head off. But 99% of the time, our content isn't really expletive heavy. And so really the changes don't affect us that much, thankfully. I haven't seen any of our videos been affected yet, but we'll see what happens as they move forward. All right. Good question, man. I love questions about the industry. All right, next up, Logan Hoyne writes, advice on how to break up with someone who is kind, but not for you. I hate hurting people, but it'll hurt worse if prolonged. Very tough situation. Yeah, that's not great. Look, when you realize you can be in a relationship and be in a relationship with a perfectly good person. Of course, they're a perfectly good person. That's why you got involved in a relationship with them in the first place. But if you get to a point where you just realize, you know what, I don't see us being together for the long term, then I think you just have to have a very real conversation with them. The kindest thing you can do is be honest softly. Be honest softly. I had a situation like that once myself, that I was, I had been dating this one girl for quite a while, but we knew, like, even before we ended the relationship, we knew that we don't see us getting married. Like, we really like each other. The dating was fine, but I knew she wasn't the girl I was going to marry. And she knew I wasn't the guy she was going to marry, but we just kept dating, right? It's just because it was fine. The relationship was fine. We were having a good time. We enjoyed each other's company, all that kind of stuff. But eventually we had to actually sit down and go, okay, look, like, I'm not the right person for you long-term. And I don't think this is the long-term relationship for either of us. And I just think it'd be better for us to end the relationship while we're friends, while we're getting along, while everything's good. Now's the time to end it. Let's not wait until it starts to deteriorate and we become angry at each other, and that's why we break up. So that's what we did. But the dynamic between every group of people is going to be different. So I would say just be honest, but be honest softly. So hopefully you found that helpful. I'm no psychotherapist, so I mean, take whatever I say with a large grain of salt, Logan. All right. Hope Suni writes, have you had a chance to see Missing yet? I thought it was pretty good, more intense than Searching, but I cared more about the characters in Searching. I haven't watched it yet because, obviously we couldn't on Friday, obviously. We couldn't yesterday because there was NFL football, and then Ann and I had UFC in the evening. And I'm looking forward to watching Missing. UFC's takes precedence for me. Today, I'm not going to be able to see it because we got a couple of football games today, and then we have The Last of Us. So I'm hoping to see Missing on Monday or Tuesday. And I'm going to publicly, what's the word I'm looking for? Chastise. I am going to publicly chastise myself here. One of the things how do I put this? You guys know I'm very busy running this channel, right? We put out like multiple factors X more content than most YouTube channels do. We put out 3 to 4 hours of content per day between the John Campea Show, whether then we have an after show or a play in chat or an open mic or something like that afterwards. And then on top of that, we're doing some of these auxiliary videos like the one you just saw about the Sony fake movie critic and all that. I mean, I'm working 12, 13, sometimes more hours a day. It used to be more, but I brought it down a bit. And there's a lot of great stuff on TV and all that kind of stuff. But I recognized about a month ago that while I'm staying up on all the major stuff, I'm not watching as many movies as quickly as I did a year and a half ago, right? I'm looking at too many of the smaller movies like Missing or whatever that come out and I'll go, I don't really have time to watch that. See, I got to get back to figuring out a way to make sure I can get those movies in as quickly as I can, because ultimately at the end of the day, I do run a movie channel. Right? Like I do run a movie channel. And so I think the last year and a half or so, I've been using my own busyness with the job as part of the excuse to put off the not big blockbuster movies and put off the like Missing, right? And I need to get back to where I'm prioritizing seeing all the new movies coming out, particularly the ones that are coming out in theaters. Those are the ones I really got to stay on top of. So that's going to be one of my New Year's resolutions. That's where I'm going to be one of my New Year's resolutions is I'm going to try to stay on top of like smaller films like Missing or whatever when they come out. All right. So no, I haven't had a chance to see it yet. All right. Joe Star Gaming writes, "Hey John, I found my dad dead in the bedroom on his floor. I got an email from you. Yeah. He went to every Marvel with me opening night. It's been really hard. Like I can imagine, but you know, here's the thing. And by the way, I did get the email you sent me and I read through it. One of the best things about the movie going experience is that they are shared experiences, right? And I remember one of the things that motivated me to starting my own, going full time with my own YouTube channel was when the guy who was my best friend growing up died. And that was one of the motivating factors for me. And it has made the original Michael Keaton Batman movie, which I was a kid and like, I can't remember how early of a grade I was in, but me and my buddy Brendan, we got on the bus. We went to downtown Hamilton, to Lloyd D. Jackson Square and the movie theater, the famous Players movie theaters that were there, and got in this, the first time I'd ever seen a huge line for a movie to watch the Batman movie. And when he died, that memory became even more special to me. Like I can't see Michael Keaton as Batman now without remembering my friend Brendan. And I take that as a blessing. I think that's a good thing. And that's one of the magical things about movies, man, is that when we have those shared experiences with people and then we lose those people, those movies almost become like living monuments to the relationship we had with them, be it friendship, familial, whatever. And I think that's going to make these MCU movies for you very special for the rest of your life. And again, deepest condolences for your loss, man. That's horrible to hear. All right. Next up, Ethan Holgate writes, one of two. Hey, John, curious if you've seen Babylon yet. I saw it yesterday. Holy cow. I freaking loved it. Amazing exploration of the chaotic Hollywood in the 1920s and 30s. And there's part two. Amazing performances, as funny as hell. Also a lot of people, and they thought it was too long, honestly. I could have watched it another hour. You know what's funny, Ethan? I've been hearing more and more people writing in good things that they really liked about Babylon. I have not, but it's not because of the same reason I haven't seen Missing yet. It's because I really, really love Damien Chazelle, the director of the film. I really love Margot Robbie. I really love Brad Pitt. And I was really interested in this movie when they showed us a preview for it at CinemaCon back in April. And then I started hearing from a lot of people that I know who saw it and said it's really not good. And it's like, oh, I don't want to see it if it's not good. Like I see a lot of bad movies, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to see it because it's got Brad Pitt. I really loved him in Bullet Train, by the way. It's got Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie. It's the new film. Damien Chazelle. I don't know if I want to watch it. I don't know if I want. So I haven't watched it yet. Now I need to get around and watching it before the Oscars, obviously, because it's going to get a couple of nominations, but I have not seen it yet. But it's not for the same reason I didn't see Missing. It was just that I'm kind of protecting my heart there a bit, but I've been hearing from a couple of people lately that they like it. So maybe I have to give it a shot. All right. Next up. Wickerman writes, have you seen the Linklater film Apollo 10.5? I have not. We talked about it on the show because Rob had seen it. So he told me all about it. We talked the show, but I never did get around. I never did watch that one myself. A Classical Mess writes, that final trailer for Scream 6 was freaking awesome. Listen, again, I'm not a big fan of the Scream series, but I did like the last film. And when I saw the first teaser, remember about a week ago, they put out that little short teaser for Scream 6. I thought that looks stupid. But then they put out the full trailer this week, and even I gotta say, man, I thought it looked really good. I think the trailer looks really good. We'll see how it turns out. Ethan Holgate writes, oh, sorry, we already did that. Justin D writes, Bella is great as Ellie, but it's hard to see her as the Ellie of The Last of Us 2. She has a very young look / stature. Should they recast for older Ellie? No. Listen, what I would say is, actors transform. Like, remember, everything you just said about Bella is the same thing you could say about Ellie in the original Last of Us, right? She's already older. The actress is already older than when they shot that thing. And by the time they actually get around to shooting it, but they will put her through a bit of a transformation because that's what the character goes through. The character goes through a transformation. They will do the same thing with the actress. Look at Linda Hamilton from the first Terminator to Terminator 2. Same actress, totally transformed. And it wasn't just because she put on some muscle. I mean, her character had become different. As a result of her experiences in the first film, her character was now in a different place in the second film, and the actress morphed to reflect that. They will do the same with Bella going into The Last of Us 2. They will do the same there. So, yeah. All right. Next up. Connor Dixon writes, went to get my mental health checked. I don't know how one gets their mental health checked. And dude, I feel great. I love the show and the community. What nice tech are you hunting for now? Let me just address that quickly. Mental health is important, guys. Again, you've heard me say it, and you're going to hear me say it 1,000 more times. I don't care if you get tired of it. We applaud our fellow men, especially as men. We applaud our fellow men when they go and get a gym membership and go to the gym and start working out because they're taking care of themselves physically. And we applaud that and we cheer that on, and we should. But there's been a stigma attached to mental health. Like it's a sign of weakness if you go to see a therapist or if you think maybe you need some help or something like that. When in reality, as men, we should be cheering that on, saying, yeah, looking after yourself, dude. You can't look after other people if you ain't looking after yourself. And what a man does is take care of other people. And so if you want to be a man and take care of other people, then you also need to take care of yourself physically, mentally. And the fact that you even decided to take some steps, that is awesome. As far as the next piece of tech that I'm really excited about, I was really excited about the new Mac announcements. The new Mac Minis with the M2 Pros in them look really, really good. There's a few pieces. A lot of the tech that I'm really looking forward to is software based. And I don't want to go into a long diatribe about that. But the phone market is kind of dead to me now. Like I'm an Android guy, but because of the ecosystem that I kind of work in is mostly Mac right now. I use an iPhone. iPhones aren't as good as really good Android phones. They're just not. But I'm using an Apple phone. But I find I've had this phone for over a year now. And I used to get like the new phone every year. I did what a lot of people used to do, right? The thing is that today's phones, whether it's the new Google Pixels, the high-end Samsungs, the Apple iPhone, I've got the 13, but the 14's now out and 15's coming. But I find these phones are so good today. They're so good. There is absolutely no reason to get new ones when they come out. Like, that's the thing. Like, this phone of mine is now well over a year old, probably a year and a half old. And it's still brilliant. It's not even an Android, which are better. It's not even an Android. This phone's fantastic. Great pictures, great video, does everything I need a phone to do. So I'm not really, so the phone market, I used to be looking forward to the new phones all the time. I'm not as much anymore today because I honestly, I don't see me moving on from this phone for another 2 or 3 years. Especially, yes, thank you, Derek Clear, especially with my iPhone on Mint Mobile, especially being on Mint Mobile, it's very advantageous. It's great. So yeah, a lot of the stuff, technology-based stuff that I'm looking forward to is really more software-based at this point. But I'm always keeping my eye open for new cameras and new microphones and all that kind of stuff too. But there's that. All right. Thanks for that, Connor. Wicked Man writes, hey, John, I would love to see a Red Dead Redemption TV show or movie in the future. It'll come, especially with The Last of Us doing so well. I can't remember. Help me in life. Was Red Dead a PlayStation exclusive, or can you also play Red Dead on the Xbox? Maybe somebody in the live chat can. I know we got like a 10-second delay, so I'm going to have to wait a few seconds to hear that. But, okay, no, Red Dead's on everything. Okay, so I was going to say, if it was a PlayStation exclusive, I'd say PlayStation's got their movie studio now. But look, the whole industry is looking at Last of Us. I think there's a very good chance we get a Red Dead Redemption movie or show at some point. I personally feel like Red Dead would be better suited as a movie than a show, but other people have different opinions of that. Wicked Man also writes, hey, John, have you heard about Zac Efron's new movie about the Von Erich wrestling family? I watched a documentary on them. It's tragic. Yeah, we've actually been talking about that quite a bit. We even had pictures of him. There's pictures that have come out of Zac Efron, who is already in phenomenal shape. Zac Efron's put on like another 30 pounds of muscle. Like, have you guys seen those pictures of Zac Efron in that Von Erich movie coming out? He's monstrous. Like, he's absolutely monstrous. So yeah, I mean, look, you're right. The story of the Von Erich family is tragic and inspirational at the same time. I'm going to be looking forward to watching that. All right. And Zach looks absolutely huge. All right. Wickman also writes, in my opinion, Antra Shigura from No Country for Old Men is the greatest villain. He's fantastic. He's fantastic. He's not my number one villain. Nothing comes close to Darth Vader. And then I think you got to put, why am I freezing on the actor's name? What he played Snape. Why am I freezing on his name? I love this actor. The guy who played Snape in Harry Potter and in Die Hard. Alan Rickman. Thank you. Star Trekking was the first person to say it, then Quirky Joe. Alan Rickman. So Alan Rickman in Die Hard, Hans Gruber. I think that's also going to be up there too. But Anton Chigurh, that, woof, oh my God, so good. And now Anton is ruling the tribes in the desert of Arrakis. Imagine that. All right. Next up, Jai CSC writes, just watch a Tom Hanks interview where he also eats what he would want for his last meal. I just watched a Tom Hanks interview where he also eats what he would want. Do you mean talks about? Anyway, what he would want for his last meal. A morbid question, but what would you want on your last meal to be? Personally, fresh popcorn and an ice cold Coke. That would be very movie theater-esque of me. But being the good Italian kid that I am, I would want a properly prepared veal parmesan. My grandmother, who you guys know, passed away last week. My nonna. My nonna used to make the best, lasagna. My nonna's lasagna was like, she made everything from scratch. She made the noodles. She ground her own beef. My grandmother's crazy. But her veal parm, best thing I ever ate. So I would say it would be the veal parm. All right. Joseph DeFilippis writes, John, do you think Brady will retire? No, I don't. Many believe Las Vegas will trade Carr for him or that he'll join Peyton wherever he goes. I think he's going to play one more year. I don't know this, and I wouldn't put money on it. I think he's going to play one more year. It will be in Las Vegas. He has had a long time, fabulous relationship with Josh McDaniels, who is now the head coach there. He was, of course, Tom Brady's offensive coordinator for a lot of years in New England. I think they have a great rapport. They've had a lot of success together. The Raiders have a lot of the fundamentals to have a very, very good team next year. So I think he ends up in, I think he's going to end his career as a Raider. But he might retire. I don't know. But I think he comes back for one more year. All right. Luke writes, how do you get Star Wars Celebrations tickets sold out? I don't know how you get them. I won't be you know me. I'm never going to another Disney event ever, like for the rest of my life. Their live events have just become jokes. The way they're organized, the fact that there's nothing really presented at them. I've given up. I'd originally planned on maybe taking the crew to London to go to the next Star Wars Celebration, and listen, I'll be paying attention to what news comes out of Star Wars Celebration. But yeah, I'm never going to another Disney event. Like not after the clown circus that D23 was. I'll never be going to another live one again. All right. Next up. Artemis writes, can you finally share the Office Virgin idea you had with potential collaborator? No, I can't reveal that. Will you release the episodes you recorded with Rob plus new episodes? You know what? The Office Virgin is going to be starting. I think we're starting it in March, but I already told you, Rob and I, we had already recorded the first episode, months ago. We're going to re-record the first episode because we've had a few different ideas for things to do. Nothing major, but we're going to re-record that. But I believe, we're going to start it up in March. All right. But I can't tell you about any collaborators yet. Let's see. Thanks for that, Artemis. Jeffrey Foote writes, if you could snap away one, which would it be? Eggs with ketchup or Rise of Skywalker? Rise of Skywalker, because I can just not eat. I don't care if other people eat and enjoy ketchup with their eggs. Hey, if you want to do that, God bless. More power to you. But I can just ignore it. If I could snap one away, it'd be the Rise of Skywalker, because that lives in my head. Whereas ketchup on eggs doesn't live in my head. Rise of Skywalker lives in my head, so I would snap that one away. Again, all due respect to those who have watched and enjoy the Rise of Skywalker. If you like the Rise of Skywalker, awesome. I'm legitimately jealous. I am jealous of you. But yeah, not so much for me. All right. Kyle Schinder writes, game day. It is. It's literally game day. And it's Last of Us Day. It's a good day, my friend. Hayden Headley writes, hey, John, are you a follower of Jesus? I think I would say this. I am what you would call a theist. I am a theist. And I've gone into that in other things, but we don't have time to go into it here. All right. King Tantic writes, let's go Cowboys. Big day, NFL, then Last of Us. Yeah, but if you're a Cowboy fan, don't think this day is going to end very well for you. Never know. Never know. Crazier things happen on any given Sunday, man. But I think this is going to be a San Francisco 49er kind of day. All right. Dr. Bright writes, hey, John, good to see you. Thank you so much. So I finally got around to ordering my MacBook Pro M1. Really excited. Okay. So you got the M1, which is probably not a bad idea since I think the cost of them have come down a bit. Rob has, I bought Rob a MacBook Pro M1. I bought a MacBook Pro M1 for Rob, but the company owned it, right? I bought it for him to use, but he liked it so much. He said, can I just buy it off the company's just so it's mine? I'm like, sure. So he bought it off me and he loves it. It's the M1 Pro chip in it, not the M1 Max. He's got the one with the M1 Pro, and he's just the fastest, most incredible machine he's ever had. Now they got the M2s out, and I'm and I've got a MacBook Pro M1 Max that I use as my home computer. But yeah, that M1 Pro and the MacBook, very, very capable machine, man. I think you're going to have a really good time with it. All right. Next up, Trav just sends in a $2 super chat badge. Thank you, Trav P. Appreciate that. A classic mess writes 49ers, Brock Purdy, third string. I know this dude is lighting it up. You know what? The Purdy story reminds me a lot of the Tom Brady story. The backup coming off the bench and all of a sudden lighting it up and becoming the talk of the NFL. He's got a lot of similarities to Tom Brady there. Daryl Best Wadley writes, most anticipated March movie, Ant-Man, Creed, Scream, or Shazam. That would have to be Ant-Man. I mean, or Shazam. I don't know. I go back and forth every day. Listen, we put out a list of our most anticipated comic book movies of 2023 the other day. And anticipated is not like ranking the movies you already seen. Once you've seen a movie, you pretty much know where you rank it, and 95% of the time it doesn't change. But anticipated can go up and down every day. There are some days that I'm more looking forward to Shazam. There's some days I'm more looking forward to Ant-Man, but definitely both of those over Scream and Creed. Although I'm very much looking forward to those films as well. All right. Fangblaze71 writes, have you seen the rumors that the Ant-Man 3 script got leaked? I haven't checked to see if it's real because I don't want to get spoiled. Just curious if you've seen it and if you know it's real or not. I have not seen those rumors and reports. I have not seen those rumors or reports. I did, however, I need to tell Rob this. I just had somebody send me the entire script for Secret Invasion. I told you guys I saw a little bit of footage of Secret Invasion that somebody who was not supposed to show it to me showed to me, which happens to me a lot. I don't know why, but I saw a little bit of Secret Invasion, just a little bit. And then somebody sent me the script for Secret Invasion. I need to cross it because I know somebody sent Rob the script for Secret Invasion months ago, like months and months and months ago. I need to cross-reference with Rob to see if it's the same script. Because if it's the same script, that's very interesting. But I haven't read it yet. But no, I have not seen a script for Ant-Man 3. If any of you guys got it, and want to send it to me, go ahead, John at thejohncampeashow.com. I'd love to take a look at it. And then I can kind of give you a feel if I think it's actually real or not, because a lot of fake ones float around, man. A lot of fake ones thrown around. All right. Thanks for that, Fangblaze. Next up, Dr. J writes, in your mind's eye, what does John Campea live in front of a studio audience look like? Would the whole team be involved? I don't think the whole team would be involved because that would be a little chaotic. I think it would look a lot like what I did at the AMC when I went and did the AMC leadership conference. And it was like 3,000 people there. And it was just, I took just a couple of people from the team. I brought Dennis, John Schnepp, and Amy Rose. And we just set up chairs on the stage and we just talked on the stage. I would probably be something like that, but I would probably limit it to maybe 3 people, because any other than that, then it starts to get, nobody really has a chance to say anything. Time is limited. So I'd probably bring maybe like 3 people, but it would just probably be us sitting on chairs on a stage. All right. Windwalker 57 writes, opinion on Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting suing over Romeo and Juliet 1968, claimed they were pressured into performing nude. Both were minors at the time. We've talked about this on the show before. It's hard to have an opinion for something that I know so little about. I mean, there's also, it depends on what state is it being filed in that particular state, and where does national law come into place here? Where does federal law come into place as far as a statute of limitations, about the country that they live in, where the lawsuit's being brought. Obviously, nobody that was involved with the situation are still at the studio. Why did it take, what was it, 30, 40, 50 something years? 55 years? Why did it take 55 years for this to, I mean, I don't really have any opinion. I wasn't there. I have no idea what did or did not happen. So other than the fact that I'd be very curious to see how, wherever this lawsuit is being brought, measures against laws of limitations, because in the United States, there's the statute of limitations where you can't get charged for a crime, for certain crimes. There are crimes you can't get charged for over once a certain amount of period of time has gone by. So like murder is different. You can be charged for murder anytime, but other than that, I don't really have much of a thought because I wasn't there. I don't know what the reality of it is. I don't know any of the people involved. I haven't heard any specifics. So we'd have to see if it actually goes to court. And then once it does, what kind of reports start coming out as a result, but we'll see. All right. Derek Large writes, hey, John, have you considered ever writing another book? Perhaps your perspective in the YouTube sphere and building business relationships. Thanks. Yeah. The problem, I have thought very, very, very seriously about writing a book about the YouTube. Like I already wrote one book, but it was a novel called The Pride. You can go buy it on Amazon now if you want. But to write more of a business book about the industry, my experiences in it, I've definitely thought about it. The big fundamental problem goes back to, I haven't had time to even go watch Missing yet. So I don't have the time to write a book. Maybe once I decide it's time for me to retire, maybe one of my projects, my retirement projects, will be writing that book. And then I will go from there. But yeah, there's one of the reasons I'm thinking about retiring is because there's a number of things I would like to actually do that I simply don't have time to do right now. And this is not a retirement announcement. I'm not retiring in the next year or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, that's probably going to have to be something that waits until I retire. All right. Thank you, Derek. Next up, Greg Scott Bailey writes, hey, John, what was the website you used to recommend that had stock music and video clips for content creators for a monthly fee? Well, that would be Storyblocks. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Storyblocks was actually also, let me try this again. Storyblocks actually used to be a sponsor of our show, which was incredible. But I've been using them for years, like long before we had sponsors or anything like this. Unfortunately, I have the webpage very, very large right now, so you can't really see it. But storyblocks.com, for one monthly membership price, you get access to all their stock music, photos, video clips. They even have templates and stuff like that. It's actually really good. And I'm wondering if my promo code still works. Hold on a second. If you go to storyblocks.com/Campea, does it still work? It does. So if you want to try out if you're going into any kind of creation at all, you got to be careful of copyright. Go to some place like Storyblocks. Again, for a monthly pass, you get access to all their video clips, all their pictures, all their audio clips and music and a lot of other stuff too. So go to storyblocks.com/Campea. You don't have to use the /Campea, but I think it helps us if you do. I'm not 100% sure about that, but yeah, it's called storyblocks.com. It's great. I've been using it for years. It's fantastic. All right, let's keep going here. Next up is, that was Greg. I hope you find that handy, Greg. Trav P39 writes, "Hey, John, how do you feel about Avatar: The Way of Water officially passing 2 billion? Yeah, listen, we said it, like, I've said for years, Avatar is going to be a monster hit, but I didn't think it would get to 2 billion. Apparently today it crossed 2 billion, which is outstanding. James Cameron now has 3 films, 3 that have crossed 2 billion. Never going to happen again. Never going to happen again. Absolutely insane. Yeah, it's such an accomplishment. It's absolutely nuts. All right. Next up, Fangblaze71 writes, thanks for all the content your team makes, John. Thank you. Best part of my workday is listening to the show, open mics, after shows, and other content you make. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. We have a lot of fun making it. Again, listen, I know that when in my spare time, listen, the most often open channel on my TV at home is not Disney Plus, is not NBC, is not CNN, is not Netflix, is not Paramount, is not whatever. The thing on my TV the most is YouTube. I love popping on YouTube and I love being able to have content from the creators that I love to follow. And, you know, again, we put out 3 to 4 hours of content a day. It's a lot, but I'm glad you're able to enjoy it, man. And I'm glad you support it. Thank you so much for that. All right. Let's see here. We are now at Marie Seifring, who just sends in a super chat badge to be supportive. Thank you, Marie. Appreciate that. And then A Chips and Jimmy Rudolphson also send in super chat badges. Thank you so much for that. And guys, that'll do it for today's installment of Ask Me Anything on this Sunday morning. Thank you guys so much for being here and hanging out with me today. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in the super chats. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us involved with the show, thank you guys so much for your support. Great to have you guys here. Thanks for hanging out. The John Campea Show, don't forget, guys, returns tomorrow. Hope you guys will come by and hang out with us as we do. Yeah, so thanks for being here, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.